Hi. Can you hear me? I hope you can both hear me all right.
Hello.
Yeah, we were supposed to
Nice
be.
to meet you as well.
Hello. I'm sad. I'm the one who's been chatting with you through Gmail. So,
That's
yep,
great. That's great.
welcome to Google, GDG again. The Oro, we're supposed to be with Enzo and Jamie, but I think they're having technical issue, I guess. But yeah, still we'll continue with our fireside chat, and we're just gonna have to be chill about this. We're just going to discuss things about your experience in Google Accelerator program. So we're actually really excited. Even me, I was so curious, like, what is it about? And oh, Google Accelerator does exist, something like that. This would be a good opportunity for the Cagayan de Oro people as well, especially to those young minds who wants to start their startups, right? So okay, so before we start our discussion, um let me introduce myself. I'm Estella. I'm the moderator for today. So I'm just gonna be
Thanks.
throwing in questions to you guys later on. And then all right, so let's start with the panel speakers introduction. You can say like your name, your job role, and then where you work at, and then the about like talk something about Nudgyt. So okay, who goes first? Maybe Kat, Shao.
Sure. So my name is Kathleen, and the Chief Scientist of Nudgyt. We're a Singapore-based company, and we focus on behavioral science and artificial intelligence. So right now, when people make decisions in the workplace, especially during remote work times, a lot of the challenges managers have can actually be solved by data, and that's basically the problem we solve. We humanize data so that managers and HR teams can act on it quickly and ensure the productivity of their organizations.
All right, thank you so much for that, Kat and Shao.
Great. Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Shao. I'm the CEO of Nudgyt, and really glad that everyone tuning in. Firstly, I want to say for everyone in the Philippines, please stay safe. I know that there was an earthquake and a typhoon recently, so thoughts and prayers to everyone out there, and I really hope that everyone is staying safe and keeping dry, especially in this time. And so, like what Kathleen mentioned, we are really undergoing a time of huge change in the world right now, especially with the pandemic ongoing. And what we really wanted to do and focus on at Nudget is how do we help people make that transition, make that transition from a very structured work environment where your boss tells you everything you need to do to the more mobile and more creative economy, right? Where how do we change that kind of behavior? How do we
Pero nga
incentivize
si Enzo ako
and how
yan.
do we lead to that kind of change, not
Yeah.
only in behavior of the talent but behavior of managers as well. So that was really one of the things we really set out to do when we started with Nudget. And I think just in time, uh, for
Yes.
the next introduction.
Yes. Okay. So we are joined here, Enzo from Advanced PH. So he is also like one of the Google Accelerator alumni, and yeah, we're just having here like introducing ourselves, Enzo. So you can like, I mean, it's your time. It's just on time. You can introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I'm Enzo. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Advance, and so we're an early wage access platform, and what we do is we partner with companies to give their employees access to their portion of their salary anytime, anywhere, on demand.
All right. So now that we've already introduced our panel speakers, let's start with our discussion. So this is actually what personally that I'm curious about. I okay. So how did you actually started with your journey on Google Startup Accelerator program? I mean, can you share to us your journey on how you able to join the program? Um, we can start with okay, now we can start with Shao maybe.
Well, in our case, I think it would be a lot where we were really looking for a program to help us expand our reach into Southeast Asia rather than just focusing on the Philippines itself. And I think we were looking at different programs, and we did find that Google Accelerator was one of the few that actually complemented both the technology aspect while also having that understanding of Southeast Asia as well. So rather than just focusing on various items such as various Silicon Valley kind of mindset or thinking, but they really focus on what are specific challenges to the Southeast Asian context. And I think Kat can tell you more about how we managed to get into the program. Yeah.
We filled in the application form.
That would be
um,
obvious.
I think a lot of the focus for us was really how we could scale using Google technologies. And it's really critical now, especially when you're running a startup, to be plugged into new and cutting edge technologies that could actually enable your startup to scale. And at that point, we were looking at multiple machine learning platforms. We were exploring Redshift, we were exploring the Microsoft cognitive libraries, and what we realized was Google actually had the capability for us to rapidly scale in terms of our machine learning algorithms. So we joined the program because we were interested in that. But can I say we found friendship and connections along the way as well? But it's a good program. The people are very warm and very welcoming, and it really helped us a lot in terms of I think the biggest thing it helped us with was in reassessing, because from a Philippine standpoint, we're used to a mindset of solving Philippine problems for Filipinos. But when you build, you have to also consider what global challenges are. And participating in the Google Accelerator really helped us put that into perspective, that we have to be looking beyond what was immediately in front of us to things that were not as easily discernible.
Okay, so how about you on your side, Enzo?
Yeah. So we actually heard or came into knowledge about the program because our CEO Jamie was invited by someone around those circles, and no, similar to Shao and Kathleen. It was really the reason why we sort of ultimately joined was because and we were a startup that was further along the journey compared to other startups in the program, but I think that we were able to appreciate that the level of scale and the guidance that Google would bring to the table in terms of utilizing what we already had and bringing it to and bringing it to our audience. And unlike Chao and Kathleen, we sort of wanted to double down on our focus in the Philippines, but it's still similar in that sense that we needed a bit of refinement in terms of our growth and in terms of the technology that we were already utilizing. And like as Kathleen mentioned, we were actually fortunate enough to work with them to for a pilot with using their technology for their I think it was you guys actually refined a bit of your model for us for a questionnaire to pare down. I think it was six from multiple questions down to like five or six questions to assess employee burnout. So that was, I mean, a good example of connections and collaboration that was achieved through the program itself. But yeah, so going through actually applying for the program, as Kathleen said, was really just um, filling up that form. But I think that it was really the profile and the stage of the startups that ultimately got us in terms of what Google was looking for. So we were just very fortunate to be included in that roster.
All right. Was it like in person or like you guys are just on like online?
So we were the first cohort that did it completely online. We were supposed, it was conventionally going to have been in Singapore, I think, where
Mhm.
everybody would meet each other and have these workshops in person. But unfortunately, of course, the pandemic happened, so we had to.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Well, this was like during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see now. So you're like the first batch to go tested with all the virtual things and the challenges that we had here also in the Philippines, especially with our internet connections. Okay, so for the next one, I mean, how did you come up with the idea of your project or company? Like, tell us more about like what benefits does it gives to the market or to your market. Okay, we can start with Enzo now from Advance.
Cool. So unfortunately, Jamie, our CEO, wasn't able to join us due to some obligations to our investors. He did send me something to sort of add into our answer here. So let me just read something on his behalf. So he
Okay.
and his co-founder Addy, who is the CFO of the company, they had the opportunity to live abroad during their, a portion of their lives through their MBAs and of course their banking experience, and then they eventually moved back to the Philippines, and they sort of got used to all the conveniences that they've seen, in the first world. And if you compare that to the local experience, you'd really see that there's a huge deficit in terms of what we enjoy in terms of just conveniences, even if it's just access to banking, or if it's access to fair credit, or access to any options to stretch your salary in that sense. So ultimately, there was a lot of financial tools and literacy available in the first world that just wasn't present in the Philippines. So they were sort of inspired to come together and create this a product to use whatever infrastructure we had in the Philippines and put that together to come up with something that could help Filipinos, especially the workforce, gain fair access to their wages when they definitely needed it. And for me, I've had the chance to work with Jamie, our CEO, in a previous company, and we sort of uh, there was a it was anticlimactic the way that company sort of progressed. So we eventually came again together, and what ultimately became Advanced. So to ultimately offer fair and instant access to the employees' wages when they need it the most, which is bridging paydays.
All right. So yeah, we can proceed with the Nudgyt. Uh, okay. Shao or Kathleen?
Well, Nudgyt actually came out when we actually started. I was working with Cat before Nudgyt, and what we actually were doing was working on AI and machine learning platforms, prediction platforms. And what we found out is that when we actually gave people a prediction, there was a lot of resistance, especially among corporates, with regards to why did the AI say this? How did the AI say that? How did the AI come to this conclusion? Do I have to follow what the AI says? And what we really found is a lot of managers, they are not equipped with data literacy. And this is not only in the Philippines, but in Southeast Asia in general. So if we end up showing them predictive models or prescriptive models, they didn't really understand what the reason behind or how to actually interpret all these charts and graphs. So what we really wanted to understand is how could it be so simple for a Grab driver to use a complex matching algorithm, right? An uneducated Grab driver can use a complex matching algorithm in their day-to-day ride sharing, but experienced executives, managers can't understand complex dashboards. So that's where the inspiration for Nudgyt came about. How can we, instead of trying to teach humans how to understand AI and AI predictions, how can we actually get the AI to actually explain the explain its findings, explain its predictions, explain its models to people in a way such that there's a collaboration between human and artificial intelligence. And that was really the gap that we were seeing in a lot of corporate kind of applications. Commercial applications, we are using complex AI in when you watch a YouTube algorithm, when you actually book a Grab or book a Uber, you're using complex algorithms when you search for something on Google. But when you actually look at corporate kind of tools, they were still very focused on dashboards, numbers, charts, and graphs. And a lot of times, while these charts and graphs look great, a lot of the users can't really understand them, can't really interpret them. And you can have two users looking at the same set of dashboards and come up with two totally different answers. So we really wanted to increase, at least improve how humans and AI interact and how we can actually leverage on the strengths of each of the AI and of the human as well. Yeah.
Okay, so how about Kathleen? Like, what do you think
I
about
think
that?
just to add to that, one of the things we realized was more often than not, companies were focusing on the technology when they made
Mm.
decisions around the data, but they were ignoring the people aspect of that decision making process. So when people make decisions from analytics, a lot goes on. So you can say that you can train them to run analytics, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure that analytics is directed towards something valuable, specifically decisions that increase the efficiency of the company. So right now we're seeing a lot of well-paid data scientists collect um, six-figure salaries, and then the business side comes out and says, why are we paying them so much when the value that they're providing is not clear? But the reality is, when you break down the data science field, you actually come up with statistics, machine learning, and analysis. And the analysis part is very hard to hire for, because when you talk to people, you can determine whether they can think or not, but it's very different for each person depending on their experience, because the way we analyze depends on experience. And for us, building Nudgyt as an alternative from our last 7 8 years of behavioral science and HR research, what we realized was you could automate that analysis process. You could make it easier for decision makers in the business to get the analytics they needed when they needed it and make the right decisions. So for us, it's really building agile solutions for companies where after the pandemic, there's going to be so much change, so much shifting. And for us, the way we see it is Nudget is a workforce solution for that kind of future.
All right. Oh, so that's very actually like very insightful. It's just recently I have this dilemma like who's going to be successfully hired to our company, and at the end of the day I was always told like, yeah, Stella, it's going to be your decision on who's who. Like, okay, is this the salary that this person's gonna get? Does he deserve this or something like that? I mean, you're right with the analytics. Like everyone is talking about okay analytics and how we increase this engagement, this and that, but are I mean the are these analytics are right for the company or for like the goal of the project that we're looking for, right? So yeah, very interesting with the AI. And okay, for the next questions, what were the major challenges that you've encountered during the program and how were you able to resolve them? All right, so we can start again with okay. Let's start with Kat now.
Um, I think I had a bit of a culture shock during the start of the program, because Philippine startups were used to a certain way of doing things. One of our mentors actually mentioned that Philippine startups have a lot of quality people, a lot of good technology, but they tend to be comfortable in a state of just existing. when it's required for startups to grow, to go beyond that existing stage, to really look at what they can build and what kind of impact they can make. um, when I was young, I actually raised money at age 22, 21. And one of the things I remember as a young person was I was always ready to take risks and push things forward. But over time, in my startup career, I became more of a safe player. I have to calculate all the risks. I have to check the that things are stable before I make a move forward. And one of the things that the accelerator really challenged me at was to go beyond the perspective that I had learned and to be comfortable with trying, experimenting, and really looking at new things again. And it's something that I still carry to this day. So it's something that's hard to develop because most people are afraid to fail. But the Google Accelerator experience really gave me the perspective that there's so much more out there. I shouldn't be afraid to fail to get something more beyond just existing. Yeah.
Okay, it was a good point. So maybe we can go for like is this, I mean, I feel like I'm picking students. I mean, it's up to you who's wanna go first. All right. Yeah, like okay, like you can go now,
You
you
want to take
can
this
go.
question?
Okay, you can
All
go
right,
like
all right. So I think we can make this more like informal rather than one by one. Yeah. I think maybe Enzo, perhaps you could share some of your major challenges first. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, what I really liked about the program, first and foremost, was that our group was, a collection of startups at different stages. I mean, some people were just trying out a concept, other people were further down the line. We were probably in the middle of that spectrum. And so I felt like they matched us well with mentors who were able to take our current or our challenges at that time and challenge us further to sort of build around those challenges and make sure that we excel at solving those problems at the same time, not just working with the problems that we defined ourselves as startups, but also uncovering things that we should have been looking at as startups at that stage. So I mean, you guys were probably around way longer than we were. I mean, uh, us as a fairly young startup, we were, at that stage where we had to grow, and we knew we wanted to grow, and that's what we brought to the table in terms of the Google program. But it was our first time working with OKRs, which was our first introduction coming from our Google mentors, and even just coming up with those objectives and key results was mind-numbingly simple, but at the same time very difficult in sort of distilling the problems that we had to focus on as a startup. And now to this date, we actually do that internally now because it's been very helpful for us. But the challenge here was actually just finding a lot of the things, paring them down so that we could focus towards that singular goal across the organization, and being able to pare it down to a quarter, to a month, or even a year, depending on what our outlook was. And I guess another difficult portion of that program was just like Kathleen said, it's really just getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, we were a collection again of startups across Southeast Asia, but Filipinos are completely different. For instance, with people from Indonesia or people from Singapore, at least from a corporate level in terms of corporate culture. And so bringing all of that together and sort of just you know uh, uh, laying out all of your problems, laying out all the weaknesses, and even just digging deeper and finding all of those problem points and sharing it with a group, and then sharing your mistakes, sharing your even sharing your successes sometimes becomes kind of awkward, given that you're sort of it's your first foray into publicizing what you've been doing as a company across a cohort of your peers. So yeah, I think it's just laying down everything and making sure that people can actually help you out by looking at their problems and say, oh, we've done that before, we can help you out, etc. So it's just it was just a completely different way of doing things, as Kathleen said. But at the same time, it was very helpful because then it trained us in a way to be more analytic of what we've been doing so far.
Yeah, I think I want to add on a bit to Enzo's point with regards to the OKRs. I think what the Google Accelerator did really, really well was they, at the start of the accelerator, they allowed us to set our own objective and key results. And throughout the entire process, they actually kept checking in on whether what we were focusing on was the OKR and how whether we were able to hit that OKRs as well. And especially for startups, that's actually really important because there's a thousand things to do at once. There's a million different bugs that needs to be solved. There's fires all around you, but you kind of have to keep your eye on the ball, and it's really important on what the ball is at any point in time. So I mean, well, I'm a Singaporean, but even the idea of actually saying I didn't hit my OKRs and I need to actually look at what's wrong with it and actually sit down with my mentors to look at what went wrong. That was like I'm not sure if it's an Asian thing, but that whole process was pretty humbling because usually as startup founders, we want to be like, yeah, we are the best. We can do everything and our company is doing great. But when you actually hold yourself to the OKRs, you get very realistic on what you're focusing on, what is the real help you need versus the help that you think you need, and how exactly are you going to get there? What exactly are the gaps that you face when you actually do the work itself? So that was actually really, really helpful. So the major challenges was really like, how do we get there? What was the eye on the price? What was the price that we need to keep our eye on as we went along throughout this entire program? And as you go along, you also realize that sometimes your OKRs can be, too ambitious or not ambitious enough. But that's really the whole calibration process. And what was really good was the mentors shake you and make sure you understand how to actually get to the different steps, how to get there, what are the gaps in the entire program. And that kind of challenging really does play a part because a lot of times when as the CEO side, since Kat and Enzo are the tech side, you really need to understand the financials and how it impacts your business. So actually keeping that eye on that is also important as well. And a lot of times we assume that the success stories that we hear from other countries can be easily replicated in Southeast Asia. And I mean, I'm from Singapore, and Singapore is still a first world country, but the business culture is still very different from your traditional, let's say, Western business culture, where people are still very relationship based. They still want to see your face, they still want to shake your hand. And those kind of elements do play a part in how we actually hit our OKRs. So it really did help us get very realistic and also realistic and ambitious at the same time about what we could accomplish. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I can hear already like finances that the CEO have to look at. Yeah, I bet that we are. We also like have this OKRs. Or they mean the boss that I've been working with is actually really like what are the OKRs for this? What are the goals? Something like that. Yeah, it's pretty challenging. And yep, with I think like most of us right now are really trying for the going AI, because who does not want like automation, right? And it really does help with all the speeds, especially the nowadays technology wise, it's really hard to like catch up with things. So moving forward, what are your notable achievements during the program? Mm,
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
I'm sorry. Um, you know what? I mean, it's probably because a lot. The program was very short and condensed, in that a lot of what we've learned from the program led to us implementing a lot of things after the program. But I guess if we were to sort of condense that into the portion where we were actually with going through the program itself, it was a lot of learning and relearning of things that we thought we already knew, and then it gets challenged by all of these mentors who were very top caliber, and then they helped us from again we our artificial intelligence all the way to hiring, all the way to fundraising. So a lot of it was very simple. They taught us about things that we thought were too obvious, but and we neglected. But then eventually they shone spotlight on all of the things that we should have been looking at. One good point of advice for me was, when if I were to be hiring someone who was outside of my wheelhouse. So I'm an engineer, but if I were to hire someone who was a project manager, although I do have some of that experience, but say someone in AI, where I'm a traditional software engineer, and hiring someone from AI, bring it to your own court. Like, so, how would I test an engineer? Use that same testing protocol on someone who is a data scientist or an artificial intelligence engineer. And I guess, and again, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And what we've achieved because of that is now we have a full-fledged data science department. We have a full-fledged, we have the beginnings of a QA department that sort of, and we've hired more people in the engineering team than we did the past years. We are starting a new fundraising round with introductions made through the accelerator. So a lot of the investors that we've met throughout the program are now sort of we're now talking to as potential investors for our next round of investment. And of course, the OKRs are now an ongoing process within the company every quarter. So it's brought in a lot of structure and a lot of best practices to our business, and we're all of the more better because of it. And again, like just as I mentioned, a lot of this happened post program, which is really more of a information collection and learning process as we went through the program, and we the implementation phase went after.
Yeah, I think to probably add on to Enzo, really what we really learn in terms of achievement isn't something you can achieve within that span of the accelerator, but what fundamental changes you make to your base such that it will allow you to grow and accelerate, right? So that's like the whole purpose of an accelerator, right? You put in the necessary items, put in the necessary processes, the change in mindset for you to accelerate. And the thing about acceleration is, um, it doesn't happen instantly, but it happens exponentially. And that's really one of the key concepts that a lot of new startup founders, I think, don't get, because they don't see themselves in the day to day. Oh, I'm doing this week and next week. It's getting better, but it's not getting as fast as you want. But if you actually put in the framework there, that's where the growth becomes exponential, right? Whether you hire a team to actually scale up your development, rather than handling a current team and then fixing all the internal challenges. Or for ourselves, really one of the key things was, how do we what are the distribution channels for our software? So there was a question that didn't even cross my mind before I joined the program. When we think of software, we think, oh, anybody can just download it off the website, right? That shouldn't be a problem. But what we actually identified is, when you're talking about corporate software, installation of corporate software into corporate structures, the distribution and how you actually get approval of the stakeholder, get the attention, approval, buying process, trying process, and buying process is actually very important. So when you actually make that change from just a plug and play SaaS to a plug and play SaaS for corporates, which means you need to integrate with their internal tools, that process doesn't seem very big at the start. But once you actually have integrated with their existing framework, with their existing tools, that's where you see a lot of people trying it a lot faster, because it's already in their tools, right? Like, if I'm using Slack every day and your web app is in Slack, that makes it so much easier to use it, rather than download a new app on your phone or download a new widget on your laptop. So those small things don't seem significant at the start, but the growth is actually exponential if you keep at it. So it's actually important to identify that at the start, identify how you're going to grow. And that's where the mentors really came in and built a lot on our understanding of how the product factors into the sales and vice versa, because you have more sales, then that gives you more resources to speed up your development, and then that cycle speeds up over time. Yeah, so I think that was really where the achievements came in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically more of a focus around improving the process instead